and dignitary suppliers, Embassy Secretary TCP, Mr. Dev Prakash, Professor Jaydev Garu from Telangana Chamber of Commerce and Trade, as well as Chief Engineer PCB, Mr. Madhu, all the staff, engineers, scientists of PCB, as well as other participants, industries who participated today, media members, and awardees who have won prizes in various contests that were held by PCB. Very good morning and greetings of the World Environment Day. Well, we all celebrate individual festivals, we celebrate national festivals, but there are some festivals which people are celebrating across the world in the largest numbers. And today, Environment Day or many other occasions related to environment are gaining more and more support and also a kind of participation by people across, not just students, academia, researchers, but by people across the world. So today we are hearing about biodiversity loss, we are hearing about species missing, a sparrow missing, not only about the ozone layer, but there are so many other smaller aspects of environment are also being talked about. There are calls across the world, there is Earth Day being observed, and people are coming out and realizing that environment indeed is primary concern. Ultimately, this is something we all know, but ultimately we may be the biggest, highest developed economies, but ultimately we definitely need clean air and clear skies, pure water in order to survive. In order to be healthy, in order to live, in order to celebrate life, we definitely need to have good environment because we are part of environment. If you pollute environment, you cannot escape the ill effects of that pollution on ourselves. Therefore, with this gaining consciousness and awareness about the environment, I first would like to greet every one of you on the World Environment Day, and as it's been informed, the theme for this year is land restoration and desertification and drought lands resilience. So we have come to a stage where we are forced to think about what has happened to land itself. Land on which we all depend for our food, for resources, for everything. And 70% of our farmers and even indirectly industry and everything depends on land. And what about the fruit crops that we are seeing today? And is the yield really increasing? Is this myth of increasing the yield from the forest really sustainable? Because we are pumping in a lot of toxins into it in the form of fertilizers or pesticides. And then we are measuring our high yields in certain very not sustainable elements of measurement. So we are thinking we are yielding a lot, but then what we are drawing from the earth is a lot more. So that is why the focus today is to see that we understand and we also realize and actively consider action for reviving this degrading land. Very soon, if we continue to do what we are doing today, the land yield, the land will be so degraded because forests are lost, lakes are lost, water bodies are lost, and then what are we making this land into? What it was in its pristine beauty and its real nature, are we just making them into some concrete structures or are we disturbing beyond that control? So we all know that the planet exists under certain boundaries, which is a safe operating space for it. So if you tinker with it too much, I think we are the first ones to be affected. It's not just that the animals and insects and birds are leaving, they're getting extinct. There is something else that is going to happen to humans also. Therefore, the concern today is to, and on the occasion of World Environment Day, is definitely to understand and think about how to restore this land fertility, how to restore this soil biology, the soil composition. Well, PCB has done a lot on plastic control, and as we know, plastic is now become so much a component of the soil. So we all assume that plastic can be, we all know that plastic doesn't disintegrate for thousands of years, but the photoactivity on plastic is something which is being now researched very, very widely. The nanoparticles or the microplastics are the real scare now. Plastic doesn't decompose, but then it becomes very tiny, tiny particles which are not even visible to the eye. So that is microplastic or the nanoplastic. Where is it going? All the plastic that we dump, when we do not collect it or we do not process it, naturally goes to water sources or goes to landfills or land. So now wherever you dig any agricultural earth, what you see is a plastic remnant. Plastic may not be visible to the eye, but then it is there in tiny micro and nanoparticles in the soil as well. This is also interfering a lot with the soil composition, its biology, and in future, what more can come from this kind of a degradation is something we cannot visualize today as of now. Therefore, and and also for the sustainable food practice is something that we have to think of. Sustainable food production, sustainable consumption is something which is important and has to do with land. These are fewer aspects about the land degradation, but I would like to just mention about the food systems that we are following now. Do we have to follow a food production system which is so heavily dependent on a lot of toxin or a lot of chemical inputs, or do we really think about the natural way of producing? Or do we think of improving the soil fertility through natural processes? Now, what we have seen today is the agriculture, Dr. Vijayalakshmi also has mentioned about the way waste is being used, say, in the agricultural university, to compost and then go back to earth. So these are the systems, and it is one of our mandates to see that the waste segregation happens and the waste biocomponent of the waste is composted, and we should probably look at ways by which our soil fertility increases through proper management of our waste resources. So these are things that need much more focus than what we are seeing today. And most interesting thing is that all these three aspects of whether it is land degradation or desertification, by which we mean that water resources reduce more and more, and that in fact again impacts on the productivity of the land and therefore becomes more or less a desert and drought resilience. All these three things add to climate change, and climate change further makes all these things much more virulent. So as we see that all the three will increase the heat, they will increase the climate change aspects, and it's a cyclical problem where one goes to feed the other. So somewhere, unless we break the cycle and we see that we make positive action, a lot of problem and a situation where it could be irredeemable would arise. Well, we already noticed a lot of deforestation and forest degradation, a lot of forest fires that contribute to this. And we are now using AI, of course, the GPS or the GIS, in order to know where fires are occurring. And in fact, this year we had an excellent study of how we could control forest fires. And it was the forest department received accolades at the national level also for responding very well to forest fires and managing them well, rushing the rescue teams, rushing the firefighting teams to these areas by using GPS. There is a huge lot of data that is being processed, collected to know where the fire is occurring, and then you can at least rush immediate action there. We are using a lot of AI, and we are trying to combat to the best possible extent on all these three fronts. Well, we should remember that we are a mega diversity country. Mega biodiversity countries are very few in the world, and we are one of them. By which we mean, though we occupy only 2.4% of the world's area, the number of species that we host are something like 15% of livestock, 18% of human population is what we know, and in this 2.4, about 17% of world's major species are living in this kind of a small area. And as we know, forests are lungs of the earth, just like we say lakes are the kidneys of the earth, and therefore they need to be protected in order to see that this kind of a land degradation stops. It is our responsibility to see that these wonderful life forms which purify earth are protected in order to see that the degradation of the land stops. And our interventions to toxic chemical inputs must reduce very drastically. The pollution that we reach out more into the earth should reduce. Otherwise, once land degradation reaches a level where food security becomes an issue, that will be very, very difficult for the entire globe to tackle. And therefore, there's now a movement for the soil fertility. There's a movement for natural, agricultural foods, which are indeed growing, but they need to be taken out of much more wider manner through academia, people like us, and across livelihood issues, which should be made more profitable, more adaptable, even for the farmers, people who depend on land for their as an occupation. The integration of science and technology